What's up, guys? It's your boys Taylor and Taylor coming back at you with another episode of the Empirical Scouting Podcast. Last episode, we detailed our top four edge rushers in this year's class. If you haven't already listened to that one, go ahead and give it a listen. I would highly suggest it as we detail our thoughts and opinions on Jared Verse, Dallas Turner, Leatu Latu, and Chris Bradwell. The episode, we're going to go and discuss a few more pass rushers in this year's class that are on that second and third tier. But we're going to go ahead and dive right into our edge five of the class, and that is Chop Robinson. He's listed at 6'3", 254 pounds. Chop was a consensus four-star recruit out of Maryland. He originally stayed home and committed to Maryland. However, he transferred to Penn State after his freshman year. In those 3 seasons between Maryland and Penn State, he recorded 60 tackles, 20 tackles for a loss, 11 and a half sacks, 3 passes defended, 2 fumble recoveries, and 2 forced fumbles. He as well is listed on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, as he reportedly been clocked at a 4.47 40 and a 4.22 shuttle. So pretty dang fast. So let's hear it on your man, Chop Robinson.
Yeah, so last episode we talked so much about what Dallas Turner could be, and that was how we kind of described, or in Chris Braswell, how we kind of described their profiles. Chop Robinson is that times 10 to me. This guy is very clearly explosive off the line, great first step, got speed, but he's a freak athlete, as you said, freakless, everything like that. Now, the other side to that is right now he's not necessarily the most technically refined guy. He relies on that speed a lot, which is fair when you have something that good, use it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you want that to be everything, because in the NFL, when you become predictable like that, unless you're the elite of the elite of the elite, it doesn't always work. My biggest thing for Chop right now is, can you play him against the run consistently, like as a defensive coordinator or on your defense? He is 250, or he's listed at 250, but you watch him, he's super lean looking. Like, this guy, to me, like, I want to see him add on some weight, add some mass to him, and do it the right way where he's keeping this explosiveness and burst. But you see it when you look, when you watch long enough, he gets knocked off balance pretty often. He's trying to come on these speed rushes or something like that, and he gets either chipped or something, and he's just knocked off balance, and it takes him out of these plays sometimes. So, kind of strength, balance, adding that to his arsenal or adding that to his profile would be really, really nice to see. But overall, this guy's a freak athlete with electric burst to rush the passer, and he shows that functional strength. You see clips of him where he's straight up power cleaning linemen off of him and just ragdolling them pretty much at times. So the potential is just there. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Yeah, and I'm just laughing just looking at these clips, and you can see that burst just straight
so
off the line. And he's on that quarterback immediately, and I think that's one of his positives and the reason that a lot of people are looking at him be a high pick in this coming draft before this past season. You mentioned adding on a little bit of weight because, like you said, he is listed at 250, but he does look pretty lean. Like, how much weight do you think realistically he could add without sacrificing some of that athleticism? Because at the end of the day, that athleticism is the thing that's going to make him special.
Yeah. It really is going to depend on if he does it the right way or the wrong way. And I fully expect him to come to the combine and weigh in heavier than 250. I expect but I think it's going to be a lot of water weight is the thing.
Typically is.
Yeah. But I think he could realistically add 10, 15, 20 if done the right way and like still keep the athleticism. But obviously, like 20 pounds is the right way is like a multi-year like process. Unless you're kind of having some extra help. Typically you can't gain that much muscle within a year. But I do realistically think that like by year 2, like he could be easy 265 and like he having that still great burst and everything like that. He's just got to be committed to doing it the right way, and the team's got to want him to do it too. You know, if he's drafted to a team that doesn't want him to gain weight, then that's a whole nother thing to it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, being similar to that aspect of Dallas Turner, to where he is super young, and he shows that athleticism, he shows that promise. However, he hasn't put it all necessarily together. Um, you mentioned to me in the past that like sometimes he's just not like as much situationally aware. He doesn't really know sometimes what's going on. Can you give me some examples of what you meant by that? Because I know you didn't mention it here, but in our past talks, you mentioned it to me, and I want kind of you to reiterate exactly what you've told me in the past.
Yeah, I don't know if I actually have like a clip of it or not, but for one like example that I can think of off the top of my head was that he had similar to Dallas Turner and at Bama, like Penn State would have him drop into coverage at times. And there was just times where I saw him drop into coverage and he sees this guy, like, he just doesn't have that awareness and coverage. And that takes some time and takes getting used to, truthfully. But like he would just see a receiver cross his face or something like that, and he wouldn't really adjust. Or he's trying to drop and he's staring straight at the quarterback, and he just runs straight into his teammate who's breaking forward and getting downhill because it's a screenplay. It's a very obvious screenplay. Like that was like the biggest one that stood out to me is this play I'm thinking of. 3 wide receivers down here at the bottom of the screen. He's dropping the coverage, staring straight at the quarterback. None of the wide receivers have moved. Like the front two just set up for the blocks, and the other guy just goes like this. Quarterback's already throwing the screen, and he's still dropping into coverage looking at the quarterback. So you just want to see that awareness of like, oh, quarterback is looking straight up left, and the receivers next to me haven't moved. It's a screen. I should get downhill and break on the screen. And he's just getting depth on his drop.
And he's probably not really used to that. Like,
Yeah, of
all
course.
he's really knowing is just, head down, get after the quarterback over and over and over again, stop the run, get after the quarterback. And so when he has to do something else, he might not just be aware, like you said, of exactly what's going on. And that's something that you could be taught, especially coming into the league at, 21 and a half years old, basically. He's a guy that can learn, and with, some of the athleticism that he's displayed at Penn State was kind of crazy. And being one of my favorite pass rushers in recent history, Khalil Mack, like you said, shades of. Is that his ceiling? Is Khalil Mack his ceiling if he puts it all together?
I mean, yeah, like if he puts it all together, but that's a lot to be asking.
Yeah.
Oh
I
God,
mean, Khalil
truthfully,
Mack for a good, like, what, 4 or 5 years was one of the most dominant,
the
scary
best in the
forces.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, I hated watching him when he played the Falcons, but I loved watching him because
yeah.
you knew he
So
was getting 2 to 3 sacks a game. And it was crazy to watch. And he was one of my favorite, pass rushers recently.
so I'll hit on the comp a little bit. First of all, like pre-combine comps are so hard because there's a lot of guessing. I try to really match up, size and athleticism, and then play style too. So right now it's still like a lot of like guessing with the athleticism matching and the size matching. Now Khalil Mack put on some mass when he got to the pros, and he's a little bit thicker now. But like when he was at Buffalo, he was pretty skinny. Truthfully, like they were similar sizes coming into the NFL. But Khalil Mack was very polished as an actual pass rusher coming out. Surprisingly, coming from Buffalo that way. Um, but if you just like kind of go watch Khalil Mack at Buffalo and then Chop Robinson at Penn State, like the way they move, the athleticism is just very, very, very similar. Khalil Mack was just, had a little bit more technique to him, which I hate adding like but less refined or
Yeah.
more athletic or whatever to comps, but I did not want to put just straight up Khalil Mack and be real.
No, I mean, if you say Khalil Mack, because you're thinking of, NFL Khalil Mack, of course, and he's definitely not nearly at that, level yet. And he could definitely put it together. He was fun to watch, but I kind of hope he puts it all together at the next level. But we'll quickly move over to our next guy. It's a guy, admittedly, I am not very familiar with, so you're gonna have to inform me a lot about him. He's your edge six in this class, and it's gonna be Austin Booker. He's listed at 6'6", 245. He's a consensus three-star coming out of Indiana, who at first was committed to the Minnesota Golden Gophers, but after 2 years of barely seeing the field, he transferred to Kansas for the 2023 season. In that season with the Jayhawks, he recorded 56 tackles, 12 tackles for a loss, 8 sacks, 1 pass defended, and 2 forced fumbles. He took us a while to see the field consistently, but when he did this past year, he sure did perform. Again, I'm not as familiar with Austin Booker, so go ahead and inform me some of his strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, this guy came out of nowhere for me. I can't remember if it was Stock Exchange Pod or if it was Dame Brugler and Nate Tice on The Athletic. I heard a passing comment on one of the pods a few weeks ago. It's like talking about the Senior Bowl, talking about guys that like improve their stocks, and Booker's name was thrown out there. I'd never heard of him before, and as I'm getting ready to sit down and watch Edges, I'm going through like the list. I like to make sure I'm seeing at least some of the like most of the Senior Bowl guys, because that does carry some weight as we've seen the last few years. And I turned on Booker and I was blown away, man. Like this guy is awesome. It seriously is. Like when you really watch him. So yeah, he did not play like at all the first few years of his college career. He had 1 tackle or something like that.
Yeah, I remember seeing it was like he was on the field for like the last play of the game and got a tackle, and that was
Yeah.
really it. And like it's for 2 years, and it kind of a semi red flag when he goes to a place like Minnesota and he can't get on the field at all, transfers out of it, and then he performs though, and now we were talking about him in the NFL draft, but you're like,
Yeah.
what happened those 2 years where he could not get on the field?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and it might be some of it might be size for him, truthfully, because like as you can see, like he's only
I w-
240,
yeah, I was
and
going to touch on that.
yeah,
Is like
he's a
240 is
beanpole
pretty
right
light.
now. But he plays honestly stronger than that, so that is the good news of it. But yeah, he's pretty light. That might be some of it. Is like he was trying to adjust body wise, as he got to the college level, but he's so long. He's got great length. He uses that length well, and his pass rush arsenal, the moves he has, it's so deep. Like, and it's impressive. It really is. Um, we can go look at some of these moves here that I clipped, but a ghost move. A ghost move isn't a move that you see people pull out too often that works, but he hits it here. He wins the rep if it's not a
Yeah.
screen. But so he's got a ghost move. We see him pull out a hump move, which once again, like not a move that works all the time for people.
Yeah,
But
he just sat that guy down.
yeah, like it. So even despite his, weight being kind of leaner, he shows that he's got some strength to him, and he's got very, very active hands. Let me see right here if I can find it. I'm not gonna find it. Oh well. But he comes with active hands, and that was really one of the most surprising things to me is that how well he uses his hands, how well he's converting speed to power, how deep his pass rush arsenal is. So when you put it all together, though, and you consider this, like this guy's pretty raw in terms of like just playtime, limited playtime, but he's showing techniques on film that not everybody's showing. He's showing like football IQ on film, which is important. Like football IQ does not always come without playtime, but he's got that awareness. He's got the awareness of, oh, this running back is going that way. I don't need to waste my time trying to set the edge this way. I'm going to disengage and go, or some things like that. And he is just very, I don't know, like I can't even put it into words like how much I actually like this guy.
Yeah, he's
Um,
just a refined guy, and you can kind of plug him in. He's obviously got to gain some weight at the next level. I mean, he's going to get thrown around. But you give him like that 10, 15 pounds of added muscle, and it's the IQ that's, I guess, sticking out for you because you can always gain weight easier than teaching a guy a bag of pass rush moves and being able to
Yeah,
use it effectively. And I mean, just looking from these clips again, I'm not very familiar with them, but just looking at these clips, like he knows what he's doing, and
yeah.
he's actually throwing guys around. And doing that at 240 is pretty impressive. And you say he's how tall is he again? 6'5"?
6'4.5". So
Six,
shade
okay,
under
6'4.5".
6'5".
So yeah, it's about to be 6'5". I mean, there's still plenty of space to, gain 10, 15 pounds of muscle and still keep that, athleticism that he does have. He's not an athletic freak, it doesn't look like, but he
No, he's
definitely can.
not.
He's shifty though. I mean, you're seeing him get around these tackles and these tight
He's
ends with ease.
he's sufficiently athletic. He definitely is, but he's not this freaky
Yeah.
fast um burst guy like, Chop
Hmm.
or Turner or anything like that. But he's got enough juice to him, especially when you pair it with his length. That's the thing. And this was a clip that impressed me. He's patient, which if you really watch this, like he slowly works
Yeah.
this. He's not just
Yeah.
running straight up in there, getting into the thick of things. He's not falling for the motions or anything like that.
And it
See, if
looks like
you watch it,
he confuses Quinn Ewers right there. 'Cause I think he thinks he's going to take off with the running back, and he doesn't. And
and
then
we'll watch
he
the
immediately collapses
lineman,
on
the
him.
tackle, or the pulling guard.
Yeah.
Sorry, the
Oh
pulling
yeah, yeah.
guard comes over
He
here.
assumes it too. Yeah.
Yeah, he assumes, oh, this guy's not actually coming. I don't need to worry about him. And his eyes move, and
Mhm.
as soon as that guy's eyes move, he hits the gun,
Oh
and
yeah.
he goes for it.
Yeah, and he
So
was ready for it. He's ready for the
yeah,
pass right there too. Like it looks like he's very knowledgeable of what's going on. And the football IQ thing is what's something that it's harder to teach. And if you can just add, like I'll keep reiterating, if you just add a little bit of weight to him, the IQ is what's going to keep him on the field,
yeah.
especially in situational like pass downs, where you don't
So
necessarily need a guy to, you don't need him necessarily to win a one-on-one on the edge and get a sack. Like he can get there, but you're not gonna be relying on him. But he could do his job.
yeah, and so like obviously this guy has come kind of out of nowhere, at least for me. Um, but there's a lot to work with and a lot to like here, I think. And you just kind of that length is not something that is the length with that movement ability.
Mm,
He's like I said, he's not an athletic freak, but he moves really, really well for someone with that length,
yeah.
which
Is he going to
isn't
Senior
a common
Bowl
thing.
or not
Yes.
Senior Bowl? The Combine?
Oh yeah, he's invited to
Is
the
he? Is
combine.
he? Is he? I figured he was invited, but is he actually going to test? And it looks like he is. Yeah, no, I will definitely be keeping an eye on him this week for Austin Booker because I kind of want to see it. I feel like he's a guy that, like you said, he's not going to be that put up those athletic freak numbers, but overall as a whole, I feel like he could raise his draft stock just being, smooth with everything he's doing.
Yeah. So overall, like the age is kind of that's like I found that online through some weird searching. I don't know
Mhm.
if that's actually what his age is going to be. I couldn't find a listed birth date anywhere. But if he's younger than this, it gives me the thought that I would not be surprised to see him taken late first if he's
Mm.
like with the traits that he has. Truthfully, I may be jumping the gun. Who knows? But he's got a lot of traits. He's got a lot of stuff I like. Truthfully, um,
I'll be sure to bring that back up if he does slide in that late first round. Like the only one that I've heard that said he could possibly get there.
but I mean, just like overall, I'm gonna say this: having watched him, like some of the other Kansas guys also stood out to me. Like, and I couldn't figure out exactly who it was, but it wasn't a draft eligible guy from like the numbers I could pick between. I don't think this is going to be the last edge rusher from Kansas we talk about in the next couple of years. Is all I'll say. They got some talent on that squad. It looks like.
But we'll bring it over to our next edge rusher with your edge seven guy who we just saw in the last game of this college football playoff, Bralen Trice. He's listed at 6'4", 274. His consensus 3-star coming out of high school in Arizona, a 2.5 year contributor with the Huskies, who accounted for 101 tackles, 28.5 tackles for a loss, 18 sacks, 2 passes defended, a forced fumble, and a forced recovery. Let's hear some of Bralen Trice's strengths.
So Trice has really active hands to sort through traffic and kind of handle himself in the run game with blockers, which is really nice. He's got great, you can see it. He's got a developed thick frame to him, which we've seen a couple guys already on our list that don't have that, which is, a positive as well. He's able to deconstruct blocks pretty well, stack and shed, or get off blocks, and he's got decent arsenal of pass rush moves already coming with him. But the flip side of this is that he's not a very bendy guy, so you're not necessarily going to be getting the cornering that you would prefer. The bend really stands out to me. You kind of see a lot of rushes just completely stall because he doesn't have the flexibility to get around the corner, and the lineman's able to get into his body. That's the biggest thing for me. On top of that, kind of building on the flexibility, is he struggles with kind of reducing that surface area, the target for linemen. So that kind of that bothers me a little bit as well. My biggest thing with Trice, though, is going to be that he's not overly athletic looking to me. Like on film, I should say, which we've already discussed. Like, you don't have to be a freak athlete or anything, but when you're very average at everything, it kind of makes it where you're like, the reps you win are great, but I can't really rely on you to win the every down reps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, and it does look like his athleticism kind of hinders him from a lot of like potential sacks or at least winning reps that you can even see on the screen right here. And for me, sometimes, and it could be seen as a positive at times, but sometimes it could be a negative. I'll bring it over to like running backs, for instance, because I've been watching some running backs recently, and sometimes I feel like guys get too north and south. And for me, I'll relate it to Bralen Trice right here because watching these highlights right here, and he's kind of just running straight. There's no bend, there's no athleticism to beat a guy. He just kind of does one thing, and if it doesn't work, he just keeps running straight. Like you see this right here, he just keeps running straight. The offensive tackle kind of pushes him out, and he's done for that.
Kind of see the bend be an issue too on some of these reps that we're coming in with, where he's having to kind of bend. He's kind of having to bend at the waist and do like a shoulder dip almost to compensate for not being able to do the full edge bend. Which having that in your arsenal is great. This is gonna be like another shoulder dip thing. Yeah, it's great, but at the same time, bending at your waist isn't necessarily what you want to be doing, because if you are doing that too much, linemen are going to catch on to that and start shoving you down.
Yeah, that dip isn't like a smooth dip to me. Like we've seen guys like, especially I know one of your boys and one of my boys, Nolan Smith. Like I watched him, and then like when he dips under the tackle, like he's gliding underneath you, and he always has the athleticism to beat you. But with your Bralen Trice, like if I'm a tackle and I see him, dip around me, like if I know my quarterback is mobile or rolling out to the other side, like do it. You're not going to catch the quarterback at all. Like do what you need. He looks like the only time he can win right here, and at least in these clips that you have, is in the inside. If he could beat you in the inside, then we got something, and he can use his hands a little bit to free up some space. But other than
he's
that,
got the bull
like
rush.
yeah, if you can stop him from beating you from the inside, like you win. Like he's not going to get past you. And that looks like it. That's what I meant by the whole north and south thing. It's like he is only going one direction. If he goes to the outside of you, he's not going to be able to beat you around the edge. If he goes to the inside of you, he's going to beat you. So it's just one of those things where if you're a tackle facing him, you kind of have to game plan for that because he's going to try to get to the inside.
Yeah, I overall tries like he's got a round 3 grade for me, and contextualizing my grades once again, like I only will have 20-ish first round grades on the high end. So it kind of builds off of there. So I only may have like 20-ish first round grades. I may only have like 25 to 30 second round grades, if that much even. So a third round grade doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be like 90th on my board, but it means I don't necessarily like trust your upside for me to say I would confident I'll take you in the first round, if that makes sense. So my thing with Trice is I think he can be a very valuable asset to an NFL team on the defense, but I want to see him be, as I say in my last line there, I want to see him as a secondary guy rather than the main guy, which kind of plays into the comp I did. I do truthfully like see a little bit of Sam Hubbard in him, and I think it plays into it too because Hubbard's kind of that secondary guy to Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati right now. They obviously did draft Miles Murphy last year with like kind of the hopes that that upside's gonna,
Yeah,
you know,
he was an upside play for sure.
yeah, they're hoping it's going to take that to a new level over Hubbard's, ceiling. But, guys like Hubbard, Trice, those kind of players, they're valuable because, they're not necessarily the star, but they're playing a role and you trust that they're going to play it well because they're just generally good players, but they're just limited in some capacity.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think he can definitely be a guy who, like you said, insert him into a team that has a number like a guy, like the guy, and you let him just have be one on one on the side. I think it would be a very smart decision for the team to do, especially like in those mid rounds, third, fourth round or so. I think that's going to be a sweet spot. Edge rushers always kind of get pushed up the board a little bit because they're one of the most important positions, and I think he could be a contributor, but he will never be the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's going to be looked at. I think people are going to be a fan of him, like playing the run if he's that secondary guy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going to be viewed as kind of like a linchpin of his team when he's playing well and defending his side against the run, essentially, and getting 5 to 8 sacks a year.
Yeah, they also get him like those effort sacks, and especially if he goes on a team that has an established pass rusher, they're going to double him. He'll win those one on ones every now and then. There's only so many times you lose, but he isn't going to be relied on to get those sacks. But if he goes to a position where he's not relied to and just do his job, I think he could be a great pick in this draft. So we'll transition over to our next edge rusher on your list, and that's going to be Darius Robinson. He's listed at 6'5" and 296, so a big old boy. He's a little bit of a big older prospect as well. He was a consensus 3-star recruit from the 2019 class out of Michigan. He found his way over to Missouri. In 5 years with the Tigers, he accumulated 112 tackles, 21 tackles for a loss, 13 sacks, a pass defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovered. He's a recent Senior Bowl riser, so let's hear your thoughts on Darius Robinson.
Truthfully, the concise opinion I can have of him is sometimes there's just guys that you don't see it with, and I don't see it with Darius Robinson the way other people do right now. I do see like the strength, the size, the length. I get it. I'm not a fan of his burst at all. Like his get off, he looks like he's running in quicksand to me at times when he's coming off the line. And like my thing with him is like I see a guy that I think can work as like a role player on the team and like can work against the run for a team, but I just don't see an edge that's worth like this first round pick that he's kind of being put at right now, truthfully.
You've been seeing first round pick like status on him?
I want to say DJ had him, Daniel Jeremiah had him like top 30 in his like latest player rankings like a couple days ago.
That's wild.
And I want to say like the consensus on mock draft database is like late first round for him. And I just can't wrap my head around it right now because for Darius Robinson, for me, like he comes off as this guy that you're gonna play for the run and he's not going to be anything notable. I don't know. Like this is the easiest way to show you what I think of his burst. So you see him here against UGA and just watch his get off on the snap. Like it's very different when you put it next to like Chop Robinson and Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell. So yeah, I don't see it the way people do. I get you're big, I get you're long, I
Mhm.
just don't see someone I'm willing to spend a first round pick on. That's why I have him listed as like the role I have him listed as is a five tech, a 3-4 end pretty much. And I think that's where he would excel for a team. I truthfully like positional value. I can't really pick a 3-4 end anywhere in the first round unless it's
Yeah.
a 3-4 end that I see athleticism for, like JJ Watt, because that's what JJ
Yeah.
Watt was.
Yeah.
Like, so the, I don't see the burst or the explosiveness that Watt had that he brought to that position.
So I'll skip straight over to like your ideal fit. So work more on it. So if you were drafting him, you would specifically want to be running a 3-4 and draft him as that 3-4 end, and obviously
Yes.
not day one. Would you do it day two?
Um,
Is he worth,
right
let's say,
now,
a mid third round pick? If you're
yes. Yeah,
drafting mid
if
third
you
round,
needed a
you need that
3-4,
guy.
if you needed a five tech and you had a mid third round pick and he was on the board, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. I truthfully like it may end up being higher than that for me based on how the rest of my board shakes out. Because like I was saying with my grades,
Yeah.
I may have I may have like 45 total people graded between rounds 1 through 3. So he may end up being like a top 50
Yeah.
player for me.
Yeah.
Um,
My thing is though, I don't know. For me, and you know me, like I'm a BPA guy at top of the draft. Like unless it's not if you have a quarterback, you're not drafting another quarterback. That's obvious. But I like just drafting the best overall player I see on my board. But as you get later in the drafts, that's when you can start, going, oh, I need that five tech. Let me go see who's there. So just because he might be like, say, number like 63 on your board, I don't know if he's a guy that I would want to draft 63rd overall.
yeah, and it kind of does depend. That's why also I label it as how I do and within these tiers.
Yeah.
Um, so like guys will stack up and naturally like will be graded higher. But the way I personally approach it philosophically is okay, I have player A and player B. They're both graded as second round picks. Player A has a 4.2 and player B has a 4.1. Well, who fits me better? What do I need more? And how can I reconcile the difference in the grade? If they're in the same tier and player B fits me better and player B is a player I need versus player A being someone I have an established player at, sure, I'm going to take the guy that's graded slightly lower, but they're still within the same tier. That's the thing.
Yeah. I do think, I don't know, overall for Darius Robinson, he's a guy that, he's going to be a great teammate. He's going to give you the effort, and he's got that size on him. And he's definitely an NFL player. He's going to be one of those guys that, honestly, he might have a long NFL career as just being a guy on the defensive line. He's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be talked about a lot. He might, bounce around through a few teams. But at the end of the day, all of a sudden, you're going to see he's going to have like a, 8-year career, 9-year career in the NFL, of being very successful of where he goes, but not necessarily putting up the stats that lead to that success, if that makes sense.
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah,
see.
that's where I'm at. I
And there's
think
nothing wrong with
someone
that
like
at all.
no, not at all. And like I said, like I see the value in him as a player overall. I just don't see the value as a first round pick with
Yeah,
the overall package he brings and what I think
that's a
he
little
can
bit too
bring.
rich for my blood. That's
Yes.
for a guy that contributes. I don't know, for first round and second round picks for me. Like I want them to be the guy. Uh, Once you get into that third round pick and going down the draft board, then you can find guys that just fill and like contribute to your winning team, but don't necessarily have to be the guy. But in the first round and second round, I'm looking for the guy personally. I'm also not an NFL GM, so that might not be what is smart. But for me personally, I'm not looking for a guy just to contribute. I want him to be a guy, be the guy for my team.
Yes.
But
Or have at least have that ceiling because I don't feel like he has
mhm,
the ceiling, truthfully. But like a guy like Chop Robinson, who isn't
does, yeah,
necessarily as refined in a lot of techniques, but like if he puts it together with some other things here with good coaching, he could be that guy that is viewed as like a top
Yeah.
5 edge rusher in the NFL.
Yeah,
And
and
that's
there's a reason that
that's
he was
the
getting looked at as a first round pick going into this year. People putting up there as their edge, edge 2, edge 3. I don't know if he ever made that edge 1 for some people, but he was one of those top 3 edge rushers coming into this year. And he didn't put it all together at Penn State as people hoped for. Didn't put up the stats either, and now we're seeing him fall to that edge 4, edge 5 range. But everyone's enamored with that athleticism and the youth, and it's what he could do if he puts it all together, and it's a team that needs to do that. But with Darius Robinson, I don't think it's a what if. It's just kind of like, we're going to insert you. We know you're going to give that effort. We know he's a team captain, so we know his teammates are going to love him, and just do your job, and you're going to
right.
get paid for it, and you're going to have a long NFL career. We'll move over to our final guy in this edge class that we're going to talk about, and that's going to be a guy that we kind of know somewhat well with Jonah Ellis. He's listed at 6'2", 246. He's son of a former Utah legend, Luther Ellis, a former consensus 3-star recruit out of Idaho, of all places, and found his way to Utah. Contributor all 3 years, he racked up 78 tackles, 23 tackles for a loss, 16 sacks, 3 passes defended, 3 forced fumbles, and 4 fumble recoveries. He's the brother of current Idaho defenders Noah and Christian, and a guy you and I know pretty well in Caden Ellis, who plays for our Atlanta Falcons. So let's hear your thoughts on the next of the Ellis clan.
One thing is I'll say I think Noah's on the practice squad for the Eagles, and then I think Christian was on the Eagles active roster and then got cut from the buyout trade, and I think New England picked him up. So all 3 of his brothers are actually in the league right now.
Oh, okay. I was wrong.
No, you're good. I just wanted to notate that.
I didn't see anything about them in the NFL, so are they all under?
Yeah, Noah's
those 2.
was a practice squad guy
Okay,
all
that's
year,
why.
and then Christian was like, I want to say like some Philly fans were upset with him being cut as after that trade because like he was just playing pretty well for them. I want to say, but don't quote me on that.
Well, I
But
apologize to the Ellis family.
no, you're good. You're good. You're good. Sorry. But for Jonah, I'll go into it with the first thing you're going to notice watching this kid is very similar to Caden from what I've seen. Very athletic. Like he's very quick, got burst off the line. You'll see how fast he is off the line just, when you watch him. He just hit a spin move on the screen right there. That is his go-to move. He is very good at the spin move. He loves that spin move. He pulls it out multiple times a game, and it works for him. Truthfully, like he does well. He's got that move down. Now, so we talked about the explosiveness. We've talked about a spin move. He's pretty patient, like playing the run, squeezing down, what you love to see, and he's able to do it in an effective manner from the backside, as you just saw right there. So that's nice to see as well, because you don't always see these guys coming off the edge able to come from the backside and make those plays. The other thing that you'll notice watching Jonah is that he's got a crazy motor. This guy's going to constantly bring energy. He's making plays all the time. Now, flipping over to the other side of this is that he's got an injury history that's already kind of starting to mount on him. He had a torn labrum, I want to say, a couple of years ago. He's missed some time from injuries. And, normally like injuries are like, that's, you notate it, but you don't take too much notice of it in a way. But with him, number one, it's big with me because he's kind of playing that like outside linebacker role where shoulder injuries are, for just linebackers in general, or like shoulder injuries are something to notate because they're common. You're using your shoulders a lot when you play linebacker or outside linebacker. And then on top of that, he's under 6'2". He's 6'1" and 7/8 is what he measured at. So he's kind of short for an edge rusher by NFL standards. So it's just kind of concerning when you put the injury with the frame issues. 6'1", 240 is kind of small for an NFL edge rusher.
Yeah. And so my thing about that is, do you think he's going to end up transitioning to be like that, like more of an outside linebacker not really on the line as much, but can definitely still rush the passer. But it's going to be more so using athleticism to like you know do cover the flats, cover tight ends, cover running
Mhm.
backs, and just kind of do the things that we see his brother doing here in Atlanta.
Yeah. So I think it's possible, and I will say possible just because Caden is like actually kind of a freak when you really watch him. Like the guy is actually way more
No, he
athletic.
really is, and he gets to the ball so much. Like he's
Yeah.
always around the ball.
He is a very fluid athlete. And my thing with Jonah is like Jonah's very clearly athletic, like you see it with the burst, but he doesn't necessarily have that like same fluidity, and he's a little bit more stiff than Caden. So that kind of gives me a little bit pause in saying I think he's gonna like transition. He could transition to off ball linebacker well, but he's when you kind of put it all together, like with the genes and like the family, like it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to do it. But overall, with him, you know, kind of a hybrid role may be where his future lies because I just the
Yeah,
frame in the
it's just
like,
the size that
yeah,
scares me because I mean he ended top 5, 6, 7, one of those spots in overall sacks this year, and like doing that in the NCAA and the Pac-12 is pretty impressive.
yeah,
So like he definitely has the capabilities to rush the passer. But at the next level, being, barely 6'2", if that, and 240, it's gonna be kinda iffy if you can actually beat those, 6'5", 350-pound mammoths that are gonna be blocking you.
yeah. And the thing too is like when you look at him, he with guys sometimes you notice like their frame, there's they can put weight onto it and move efficiently. So like, or you think they can, you can project that. Chop Robinson and Austin Booker, two guys we talked about. Like, I think they can gain weight and do it in the right way and still move well. I'm not sure Jonah Ellis can gain weight really. His frame to me looks developed and maxed out, truthfully. So that's like one of my concerns too, if you want to try to keep him on the edge. Um, and then when you compound the frame issues with the fact that he's not very bendy, which is a way a lot of those undersized rushers really win in the NFL, that's where it's kind of like, okay, this guy may not necessarily be someone we want as our to draft highly as our primary pass rusher. He's actually this guy that we want to come in and play a specific role, or we want to move him to fulfill something else and play edge sometimes in a specific way as kind of a
Yeah.
utility guy.
Yeah, I see him more so, like you said, like, I mean, it's stereotyping him, but putting him in that Caden Ellis role. Because Caden Ellis will be a guy who comes off the blitz and obviously will also play, his linebacker duties. But for Jonah, I don't think he can be an everyday player on defense. But you bring him in those situations where, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, where he can use athleticism to kind of cover a flat, but he might also blitz too. And as a line calling out their blitzes, like you got to be wary of him. Like people are going to know that he was top 5 in sacks in the NCAA. So, and he definitely has those capabilities, and it's just that threat of him being able to do it. Now, if he can do it at the next level, I'm not sure, but like he has that high motor. He always has a nose for the ball. He's pretty good in run defense. He obviously has put up sack numbers. So there's a spot for him in the NFL. It's just finding that spot for him. And the
Right.
only thing I keep coming back to is Caden's role.
Yeah, I mean I do think he can play as an edge rusher, but just not like you said, just not every down. I think he's like a good rotational piece, and that's kind of plays into my like comp for Ogbo Okoronkwo. Um, Dude was a pretty successful college player at Oklahoma. He went pro, played for a few years for the Rams, played for the Texans for a year, and then he's currently on the Browns. And when he signed for the Browns, he signed for like it's not big money, but he signed like a 3-year, 20 something $million contract or in that range. Like, so it's a decent payday, but it's nothing like huge. But they're kind of similar they profile very similar. Where like Ogbo was a shade under 6'2", 250. He ran like a 4.7, but he was like he had that burst off the line, and he's kind of carved out this role for him in the NFL where he's not a the main guy. Obviously, like Myles Garrett's the main guy there, but he's a good ancillary piece that can rush the passer for a team. So that's just kind of my thought process with Ellis. Ogbo's, he's good for 4 to 6 sacks a year and playing, solid defense otherwise, just because he's athletic and can move in space. And I think Jonah can do the same for defense.
Yeah, just playing his role. That's all you really need to do. But that seems like a good spot to wrap up today's episode of this edge class. Before at least pre-combine thoughts of this edge class. So just let's wrap a bow on it real quickly. Give me a quick summary overall of your thoughts of this entire edge class for this NFL draft.
Deep but not top end, I guess. Is
But not top end.
Like there's not a guy I would peg as a Will Anderson type or Myles Garrett like elite prospect, but I think there's good players that can provide value to a team in either an immediate capacity or developmental capacity that will contribute at the next level. It just kind of depends on finding it.
I tend to agree. I think there's a top three, obviously, and it's a heavy top three heavy class. But from there's a handful of guys that are either developmental pieces that are young that have shown that promise or have shown that athleticism. And if you can just get them to make it all click, they can maybe be something special, or be guys like the last two guys we mentioned, Darius Robinson and Jonah Ellis, that they're not going to stand out, on paper. They're not going to stand out in the box scores, but they're going to have, 6, 7, 9, 10-year careers in the NFL just doing their job. Never going to be like that overall guy that everyone's talking about. Probably not going to have a lot of jersey sales, but at the end of the day, they're going to have a long NFL successful career for probably a handful of teams. And those are the guys you need to fill out rosters, because everyone can't be a Myles Garrett. Everyone can't be, TJ Watt.
Yeah. So just for context of it, you say like how there's a clear top three, a heavy top three. That top three of Verse, Turner, and Latu, they're here for me, right? They're all within that kind of tier, even though I don't have them graded in the same tier. And then there's a very noticeable drop off on my grades to Braswell and Robinson and Booker and Trice. And then they're that next kind of group together, very close. And then it's a pretty steep drop when you get to Darius Robinson and Ellis.
Yeah, it's similar for me. I have Chop a little bit higher, but it's just the athleticism and the age that I'm just like, there's something there that I'm just like, if it all clicks, like he could be up there with them if it all clicks. So I have him in that like middle tier by himself at number 4 personally, and then Braswell, Trice, and the rest of them following in that next tier. Just because that's that tier for me that I have my immediate contributors. I have a guy with huge potential if he puts it all together. And then I have my tier of guys that you need to have to fill out NFL rosters. Like you said, it's deep because there's a lot of those guys that are going to be NFL players for years to come. It's just they're not going to be the guy. You're not going to be like, oh my God, this was such an amazing pick. Like no one's looking at Okoronkwo when he was picked and being like, that was an amazing pick. But he's obviously a successful NFL player, and it's a guy you need on their team. And guys and teams recognize that, and he's just not going to be like one of those fan favorite guys that everyone's looking back on and be like, well, he should have went, top 10 overall. Yeah, I just don't see it for a lot of these guys.
Yeah. Right now, I think we've hit on like the main names. The only 2 guys out there or 3 guys out there that like people might be missing are like Adissa Isaac, Marshawn Nealand, and like maybe Javon Solomon or the Murphy twins, something like that. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but truthfully, like the only guy I have on my list that I could even imagine breaking into this top 10 or whatever we did is Iabioki. Like deep name that you may not recognize off the top of your head, coming from Charlotte. but
Oh,
he's
okay. He's a Charlotte guy. Okay.
yeah, but he was a 5-star
No,
that,
yeah.
that head case at Bama that
Yep.
has bounced around,
Yeah.
and there's probably traits there. I haven't dove into the tape too much or anything like that, but that's the only guy. Like if I'm really banking on the traits and ignoring some of the red flags, that I think could maybe make it
Mhm.
into this group's.
I mean, we've been sending each other mock drafts for years and years now, and we always slide those kind of guys in that, fifth, sixth, seventh round, where it's like, oh, he was that former top 10 overall recruit back in 4 years ago, but his career has been derailed, but he's draft eligible. And at that point in the draft, might as well take a shot on that talent because there was something there, obviously. But
Yeah,
it's just the high upside plays that I think we both enjoy, especially in those situations. It's kind of like just banking on there's got to be talent there somewhere. The only guy I had that was outside of the guys we mentioned today and yesterday was the Adisa Isaac. I was watching Chop Robinson. I kind of noticed him. Other people had talked about him, so I wanted to kind of like when I watched Chop Robinson, I also kind of like watch him at the same time. And I mean, I don't see anything special there, but I think I would have him in that tier with some of the guys that we had mentioned. Yes, you have it right there. But that's going to wrap it up for today's episode for these edge rushers. If you're going, go ahead and give us a follow on all social media platforms at empirical_scout. We're putting out some good content, specifically on TikTok and Twitter, that really adds context to some of the things we talk about in these videos. If you're listening to us on Spotify, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and click that like and subscribe button below. For Taylor, I'm Taylor, and we will see you next time. Peace.
1, 2.